Our scripture reading this morning is the Gospel of Luke, chapter 24, verses 13 through 34. Now on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about these things that had been spoken while they were there, and all the things that had happened, and discussing them, himself came to them and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him, and he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you were walking?" They stood and looking sad. One of them said, "Whose name was Cleopas?" and answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day that since these things have taken place. Moreover, some women of our group around us, they were at the tomb early in that morning, and when they did not find his body, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, and they did not see him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all the prophets that have been declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. And they came near the village to which they were going. He walked ahead as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening, and the day is now nearly over." So he went in and stayed with them. And when he was at the table with them, he took bread and blessed it and broke it and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, and while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and the companions gathered together. And they were saying, "The Lord is risen indeed. He has appeared to Simon." And may God add his blessing to the reading of his holy word.
Thank you, Ted, for sharing those words with us this morning. Please join me in a moment of prayer. God, as we come to this part of our service, as we come to reflect on your word, may we put aside any preconceived notions, but open our hearts and our minds to your presence in our midst, that we might hear and see more clearly your call in each of our lives. Amen. Who has not had a moment when there's been a moment of revelation, when suddenly you see what you had not noticed, comprehended what you had not understood? It's like this aha moment that comes comes as a sense of awareness or an, oh yeah, now I get it experience, or even more, and now I see moment. It's more than simply seen with our eyes, however. It's that awakening within us. And such is what this morning's message is about. These two traveling between Jerusalem and Emmaus, an awakening within, a resurrection moment of the soul. As the two walked along that day with their new companion, this person who came along, we learned that though they did not recognize him as Jesus, there was something about him that touched a deep place within. We are told that once they realized that it was Jesus in their midst, they said, "Were not our hearts burning within us when he talked to us and spoke to us of the scriptures?" But how could they not recognize him? Isn't that kind of confusing a little bit? How can they not recognize him? Their leader, the one they had been following, the one they ate with and they had conversation with, the one who they had all of their hopes in. How could they miss that it was him walking along with them? It was only after Jesus broke the bread with them that their eyes were opened and that they recognized him. What got in the way of that vision? What got in the way of them being able to see as they were walking along? Could it be that they already had their opinions fully formed? Jesus had died. They saw that. So maybe it was that. There was nothing left but to mourn. They called him a stranger. You might have caught that in the stranger came along. And they were shocked that he didn't know anything about what had happened in Jerusalem, because everybody knew what happened in Jerusalem. And they began to fill him in about what took place. And they added that they were so regretful that they had put all their hopes in this Jesus, that he would redeem Israel, that he would change their lives dramatically in a positive way. And now he was gone. They spoke with him as an outsider, filled with this assumption that he was someone they had never met before. Yet all the while it was Jesus before them, right there before their eyes, but they could not see. How preconceived ideas can block our sight. How closed-mindedness can limit us from seeing and dreaming of and thinking what might be possible. It was true in this story, and I think it's true, it holds true throughout our lives. Whenever we perceive that our way of seeing things is the only way of seeing things. When we do not remain open to the possibilities that might be beyond our imagination, beyond our wildest dreams. Being stuck in is a familiar result of having limited ourselves and others. Being stuck is death to the spirit. Being stuck is what causes us to miss the resurrection around us. Elaine Wainwright sums up this whole passage with these words. She said, "At the heart of the Emmaus story is an urging towards a deeper faith, to recognize and discern, not just to see. Like Cleopas and his companion, we need to open our eyes to what is before us," she says. As ecological readers, this means being attentive to the material. She says every eyewitness to everything that is around us, but also maturing in our understanding so that we recognize the relationships that form the earth community, that we open our eyes to see resurrection in the world around us. It was only in the sharing at the table that the two disciples recognized Jesus. Luke uses similar words in other places in that passage in the gospel to talk about the breaking of the bread and the pouring of the wine. as significant to Jesus and that sense of communion with him. And it is in those familiar words, the behavior of Jesus that they had experienced before, that opened their eyes that they could finally see, and that released their preconceptions that they could truly see who he was. It reminds me of the woman at the well, that we remember, not the well, the woman who came to the tomb and saw a gardener, but didn't realize that the gardener was Jesus. Until what? Until he calls her name. That personal relationship that opens her eyes to see. So it is this intimacy, this relationship, that closeness that breaks through the barriers of sight and reveals the extraordinary. I believe that is true whenever we gather, whether sharing in food or word or thought or action. Meaningful things happen. Meaningful things happen when we gather together here. Relationships develop. The eyes of our hearts are opened to see more than we imagined. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who is a French scientist, who's a Jesuit priest and a mystic, began to understand that. He says that through communion with the earth, that we experience communion with God. That the heart of matter is the heart of God. That love of God is love of earth. It's all intertwined, inseparable. It is this, he said, I now see with a vision that will never leave me, that the world is desperately in need of at this very moment. Our recognition that we are all interconnected. Every one of us and all living things. Yesterday was one of those magical moments as we gathered to share in our Earth Day celebration. Artwork and writings from the children of the Watrford school were hung around the Wilkins house. You know, and I have to say, as I was driving down here this morning, I said, darn it, why didn't I think about taking what was on the walls there and stringing them up in here so that all of you could see? It was fascinating, it was wonderful, and there'll be pictures to share, but that's not the same. But around the room was filled with all this work that the kids had done. And then outside and inside were tables set up with hands-on activities, that helped to enlighten kids about our environment. We did feeding the little bird feeder things. We planting seeds, composting, talking about reusing, demonstrating, reusing, reducing, and recycling. It was a wonderful intergenerational gathering for those who took the time to go around and read some of what the kids wrote and saw what they did. It made you stop and catch a glimpse of the world through their eyes. And we need to do more of that. Capture the world through their eyes. Why, one child wrote after picking up trash behind the school, do people do that? Throw their trash everywhere. And I have to say, all the little plastic bags, that's the way it goes. We're kind of stuck in this environment, aren't we? But they collected stuff that was just behind the school. It was unbelievable, the stuff that was there. Others wrote statements that they would try to do whatever they could to help keep the planet healthy. The pre-K class said they sent in a large circle with their green and blue handprints all over it, representing the earth, and below it read, "We can change the world with our two little hands." Yeah, we can. Every one of us, and even more so when our hands join together in the work that needs to be done. I know Ivy and Owen were eager to show their artwork, and Ivy pointed out her hand on that earth. This biblical story that we were just reviewing is one about movement. Movement, it's not static. Not only are the two travelers who seem to be a part of the disciples on the road for whatever reason, we don't know, except that it appears that they were trying to move away from the horrible events of Jerusalem and those depressing days. They were journeying toward Jerusalem, or toward Emmaus, but something happened within that, with one who came along to sit with them and reveal himself to them, and their eyes were opened, and they returned back to Jerusalem with a whole different step, a whole different gait. To me, it was sort of like yesterday, coming into, we can be so laden down with the issues of our times, and yet gathering together in that moment yesterday, which just enlightened our spirits and helped us to realize that we can do this together. Their walk in this story became a journey of the soul, and I think if we open ourselves up to that every day, we will witness that as well. Our journey through life is sacred. We may not know exactly where it's going to take us, but we can know this, that opening ourselves up to discovery, traveling side by side one another, recognizing our interconnectedness, working toward the common good, no matter how arduous the journey is, will reveal to us the hope we have been searching for and the light that is the sacred in all things. I am forever grateful for having been brought up to see the world around me. My parents were always pointing out those things around our backyard and as we camped and hiked together. And then the times I just scrambled around playing outside. I now know it was also inspired by something deeper within my parents that words could not really express, but a movement in their soul that they passed on to me. And it enabled me to see the sacred connection of heaven and earth as the resurrection surrounding us every day. My hope is that I've been able to pass that on to my daughters and my grandchildren and others whom I've met along the way, and that they in turn become that for others as we weave this indescribably magnificent web of knowing that can change the world. The health of our planet and the well-being of all of life are completely tied together, woven as one moving sacred sphere of possibility that more than invites us but requires us to join in the dance of hope and become part of the presence of love. It is no surprise that in our story today, Jesus vanished as soon as they recognized who he was. You see, he no longer was before them, but was within them. That is the Easter story. Christ in us, love in us. In that truth is our hope for the transformation of the world. It is not a static truth, but a living, moving, journeying forward truth of immeasurable potential. The greatest teaching that took place at our Earth Day celebration was in the coming together as community around a love for our natural world. The lessons came through in doing together, in being together. That is our common hope. Amen.